Hey everyone, I'm Greg Marino here with Gabe DeBrosi, coming to you live from Hillsdale College, right here in our dorm room. So we're a couple of college roommates, been good friends for the last few years, and Gabe is the captain of our D3 college team, Hillsdale Chargers, and I'm the president of the club, so I handle more of the administrative side of things. Gabe works on the field and
Yeah, so I've been the captain of this team since this year. The year before, I was the assistant to the captain, except I was injured all season. So I was really doing some important stuff on the sideline, just running lines, looking for strategy, things like that, stuff that our previous captain, Nick Akers, couldn't really, would rather not do himself because he wanted to focus on his own playing as well. So, and then, Greg is, of course, he was my assistant last year. He was the assistant to the captain.
very important
Very
role.
important role, yes. Did a great job though. But now, yeah, we're the ones heading the club, and it's looking like we're gonna have a lot of success this year.
Yeah, so let's talk about the region we're in. So we are a D3 men's college division in the Great Lakes region, and so our region only gets one bid to college nationals. So that's our goal for the year. I think for a lot of the better teams in our region, that's kind of a good starting point to say, hey, our goal is to make it to nationals. If we make it, see what we do there, kind of play it on the house's money at that point.
Yeah.
But I think there's quite a few teams who are pretty hungry to get into nationals.
Yeah. It's looking like it's going to be more competitive than last year for sure. It's looking like from the results, Grace College is looking a lot better this year. They went 7-0 at Butler's Big Dog tournament. Was that last weekend or 2 weekends ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks right before Easter.
Yeah, so Grace coming out going 7-0, that definitely shakes things up a bit. They're looking like they're gonna be a lot better this year. So
Yeah, so Grace went to nationals in the Great Lakes region 2 years ago. Butler went last year, but Hillsdale, we started up our program last year, had a pretty good showing.
yeah,
Regionals came in fifth, won 4 games at regionals.
yeah,
So we think we got a shot, obviously. But then the new major player in the mix this year is
Yeah.
Davenport University. So Mike Zagman, we've gone to a lot of tournaments he's hosted. He's a great frisbee guy all around, and he's coaching down there. And they got a varsity program. I've heard that they've even like signed people from overseas to to join their program and stuff. So I sounds like Davenport's like they're legit, and
yeah.
they're expecting to roll at regionals.
Yeah, I think Ulti World's article on the D3 Power Rankings had them, even though they haven't competed before, just gave them a really high ranking just for the fact that they have a varsity program. It's not common in D3 Ultimate. Ave
Yeah.
Maria is pretty famous for its varsity program, one of the only other schools in D3 that has one. And of course, they're super good. I think they're ranked 8 right now. Yeah, they're pretty top dogs. So, yeah, so Davenport, they're looking like they're going to be really good. No two ways about it. They have Zag, honestly, is just the man behind Michigan Ultimate.
Yeah,
Kind of single-handedly, honestly.
he hosts the tournaments. He's involved in the youth program.
Huge youth program.
Now he's
guy,
got a
yeah.
college team to his name. So
And money to work with as well.
we were definitely not thrilled when we heard that we have to beat Zag.
Yeah.
Who, he was like the guy who hosted all the tournaments that we went to as we got into it. Well, me more so than you. You played in high school and stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, I was in high school, just kind of getting into the sport, and Zagman was the guy running the whole thing, and now it's like, shoot, now we're gonna have to beat him
Yeah.
if we want to go anywhere this year.
Yeah.
So
Kind of a good plot line.
yeah, friend of ours down in Indiana has played with some of the Davenport boys, and he said one of them's just about one of the best college players he's ever seen. So, that could be more talk than play, but
We'll see. Yeah. We played, we just had a short 50-minute game with them it was last semester.
yeah,
right?
unsanctioned.
Yeah,
So,
indoor.
we were both missing people adding in alumni and stuff. So it
Yeah.
was a little scuffed. Like it wasn't a sanctioned game, but they did beat us at that one. It was a close
Yeah.
game though, but there's some really good athletes. And
Yeah, they have real. I mean, that's one of the things that you get with the varsity program is you get to have legitimate athletes in the sense like these guys are probably doing team workouts with each other multiple days a week. Their practices are required. Like it's just really, the scholarship itself just like lends itself to a level of commitment that clubs for the most part can't really match.
And the scary thing about like the athletes we saw last semester is when you give athletes to a high level coach like Zags, you're going to then get high level ultimate frisbee players because we've seen it a lot. We've walked all over good athletes who don't know how to handle a disc.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem in college. Ultimately, a lot of times clubs who are just recruiting freshmen at like their school's source or whatever, they get some good athletes, some guys who played soccer in high school, some guys who almost, maybe just missed like playing in college football.
Yeah.
End up joining club frisbee. And they can run, they can jump. They're super athletic, but they can't really throw, and then it's
it's just turns. Right?
Yeah, they give us a little trouble, but it's not too hard. But I think that's actually a big question about D3 Ultimate is because it's like a much lower level of Ultimate. How much do you think athleticism wins versus like the skill and field awareness and an understanding of the game?
Yeah, so I think the most common thing to see, especially, I mean, I can really only speak to the Great Lakes region, but the most common thing for us to see is, schools that have good programs, like Butler, like Kalamazoo, like Wheaton, like Grace, like us, honestly, is that you have a lot of, it's like, I mean, they're coming from bigger schools for the most part. Hillsdale's small. We've got like 1,400 students, but those other schools are pretty big schools. So they're getting like a pretty high level of athleticism, like you were saying, with their players. Guys come on, maybe they play a little bit of frisbee in high school, or maybe they just didn't quite make another varsity team they're going for, and it's like, all right, I still want to pop off and have a good time in college sports. I'm going to play frisbee, and so they're kind of starting from ground level when it comes to skills, but they're really athletic, and this is what we really see. I think Kalamazoo is a really big example of this last year. Butler's like these guys have got full teams with 15, 20 guys, maybe two full teams. And, they've got like one or two guys that really know the sport well. They've clearly played a lot in high school. They have great handling. They have great game sense, great field awareness. They're just awesome players. And they're really the ones trying to like drive everything. And it's like, all right, I've got this athletic guy that can kind of get open. And if I pass it to him, there's like 10% chance he drops it and 50% chance he just throws a turn right after it. And so that's like one of the big limiting factors is skill.
Yeah. And I think you see it why, especially against a lot of zone defenses, if you take away the deep game, teams can have a hard time scoring.
Yeah, exactly.
It's because even if they have free resets all day long, they still screw those up. And that's like the big difference between D3 and like D1 versus higher level club ultimate is like pretty much every throw has a significant risk factor at the D3 level.
Yeah.
And that really shouldn't be the case. As you get into higher levels, like an open swing is like 99% chance of being caught.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
in college, it's like if you're kind of throwing it to that one guy who, missed a lot of the practices this year, there might be like a decent 5 to 10% chance a wide open swing gets turned over. And while that's not a huge chance, when you're trying to throw 10, 12 of those over the course of a drive, you're trying to really grind the way down the field.
And, I'd say especially with college, I think pretty much every single team that we played against last year throughout zones against us, in lower level zone is super, super popular because it requires just a higher level of field awareness, higher level of disc sense, better throwing. You just got to be a little bit of a better player and a better team to play well against the zone. And so everyone's like, but they're relatively easy to learn. Anyone can learn how to play a zone pretty quickly. We, of course, made huge use out of that last year. So in that sense, because of the way that zone defense works is, hey, you're finding all the valuable places on the field and you're putting your defenders there to begin with. So it's like, wherever the race is to the disc in, the defense is already won in a sense with the way that zone works. So athleticism really starts to mean less and less when you're playing against a zone.
Yeah.
And disc skills become a lot more important.
It's like that one guy who can outrun absolutely everyone. Well, he can run all he wants, but he's always running into someone. Whereas in man, if he can outrun everyone, he can just go deep and score.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But,
so he's not gonna get behind her deep. He's gonna have to work really hard to get open in the middle.
Yeah. And that's basically been our formula for defense the last few seasons has been just have like a halfway decent zone that's good enough to stop like mediocre throwers, and then a dominant deep who just completely takes away the deep spot.
Right.
And if you just have one free safety back there who's very good, very fast, athletic, and got some hops,
jump,
then you can pretty much shut down a deep game entirely. And then the only way to beat that is if you have a few good handlers, and you need more than one. Because if it's only one,
exactly,
you can usually find their ace and shut them down.
Yeah, so that's like the difference between like a Kalamazoo and a Wheaton last year. We saw Wheaton had one really skilled player, very good with the disc. He played almost every single point, but if you can shut him down, he just can't do that much with his team, and so his zones are going to be a lot more impactful on him. Whereas say Kalamazoo, I mean, we saw them at the beginning of the year, and a lot of their guys were really lacking in disc skills. They had one solid guy who I think has graduated now, Dylan, great guy to play with. But, I mean, a lot of their guys really, really grinded and worked on throwing, and it showed a ton at regionals. They just had a lot of guys who were very competent with their throws, could make those swing passes all day without much risk. And, because of that, they were really able to tear up our zone. They were super effective against it. Butler had a similar deal with some of their senior players. They lost to Grace at regionals last year kind of unexpectedly, but that was because all of the seniors were off at graduation. They came back the next day and were cooking. So
yeah, that's the other thing about D3 is you get stuff like that. Teams have a bad day because it conflicts with their graduation, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, we're in a traffic jam. We're missing like the first part of the first game.
It's just the reality of club sports in college.
Yeah, D3 is all club, not varsity. So clown stuff like that can happen and change games. And so with that in mind, as a captain of a college team, you're managing not just yourself, but all the players. And so obviously there's a lot to do throughout the season to get to a spot where when it comes to game day 2 of regionals, it's win or go home. What do you do on that day to actually make those wins happen? Because you can do all the prep you want, but at the end of the day, how are you going to beat a team that's maybe a little bit better than you? A team like Davenport that maybe has a little more scholarship money, better athletes, more players. That's a big thing. Last year we ended up with 11 players on day 2 of regionals, which, we grind, but it's tough to do with 11.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are game day strats as a coach?
Yeah, I think one of them I think morale is such a huge deal. I think big deal is like, staying hydrated and getting to bed early the night before second day is so important because this is a huge advantage that bigger schools have. Butler, with their 25 guys, are just not going to be nearly as tired as we are going into second day regionals, and they're going to have a big advantage because of that. So, for us, hey, make sure we get good rest. Make sure we're actually ready for game day. We didn't stay up until 2 a.m. talking and having fun. As good of friends we are on our club, we have to be a little bit more judicious about that. And the next is morale. I think a lot of people tend to, especially when the stakes get higher, people tend to give up sooner, especially when they're tired. I think you go down 4 and maybe in the beginning of the second half and you're down 4 and it's like you already start playing like you're down 4. And just that the ability to play like it's 0-0 all the time is actually so unique. It's not something you really find in the lower levels of college ultimate. Maybe, D1 nationals, that's where you're getting athletes who are actually extremely good at keeping a level head, playing like it's 0-0, and that's where awesome comebacks happen. So making sure morale is high, make sure that we're we're hyped up as a team, making sure that we're not playing like we're down, or when we're up, we're not playing like we're up. We're playing like it's 0-0 all the time. It's such a huge deal.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed in a lot of our games is over the years we've blown some egregious leads, had some big comebacks, and then hung tough, let games fall away. I've seen pretty much every type of gameplay happen, and just seeing all that happen totally makes me think. Sometimes being down 4 is just what the team needs. Sometimes, like, there's some players particularly who, once they're down 4, they're like, oh, I guess now I'll try, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's other guys who, like, once they're up 4, that's when they are like, oh, now we're having fun. Let's actually play hard.
Yeah.
So it really depends, and it's like, yeah, having a hand in that team morale is so big because we've seen it just at our last
it changed
Butler
everything.
tournament.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It was like we showed up. I remember we had 9 people for that day 2 of Butler, and we show up. It's like super cold because it's still early in the morning. It's like 8:30 a.m. We're not on a whole lot of sleep because we did not do what you recommended with sleeping well. And there's just the 9 of us doing our little warm-up drill where we're throwing and catching to each other. No defenders. It's like 10-yard throws, and like half of them are drops because it's a bit windy, and it's like, shoot, like we are not moving the disc 20 yards without defense. Like we're about to get screwed here. And there's 9 of us who have already played 2 days of Ultimate on the weekend.
Yeah.
But then as we get into the game, it's like next thing you know, we win a point, and it's against a good D1 school. And we're just like, hey, you know, we can do this. And then we kind of just start to get hyped, start to get into it. So like, yeah, you know, we're the 9, you know, we're the guys who are going to show up, 9 of us, pull up and win against all odds. And then we just really all embraced that mentality. And by the second game of that day, we just ended up absolutely wrecking a pretty good school too.
Yeah, we were an oven and we were cooking.
Yeah, we absolutely cooked some D1 competition with our 9 guys.
Yeah,
who just full sent it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, not even necessarily our 9 best guys. So it's like,
yeah,
and that's so good for morale. And especially, I mean, we also saw this with our game against Butler last year in day 2 of regionals. I mean, I think it said we had 11 people for day 2 of regionals last year. We just had a hard time getting people to come out. We'll be better at that this year. But
yeah, we had some conflicts with a couple guys. You know, had like some last minute emergencies and stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, I was injured. So, I mean, you know, but we came into that day, and I mean, we had a good attitude. We started playing. It's like, hey, we're actually kind of tight with them. We got behind 4 at one point, but it was like, hey, you know what? Like, you win because you make the decision to win. Like you play well because you make the decision to play well. Like you go a little bit harder on that cut. You fall a bit closer on defense. You go for that D. Like, and you make the choice to do that. It's like you're tired.
Even
you're
just
sore.
like throwing, you're like, I'm actually gonna think about my throws and not just lackadaisically toss one into double coverage
or that.
Upwind, you know?
And I mean that really showed. I mean, we scored 3 in a row. Then went back a couple, and I think despite hard cap, we were down by 1 at the end of the game. It's like Butler. Their captain actually came out to us and was like, "Hey, you guys actually like showed some serious holes in our play that we have to pay attention to now." It's like Kalamazoo didn't do that.
The hard part is like as team leadership, capturing those moments and putting that type of energy into your team when you need it most. Because it's one of those things where I think we've both experienced this. Sometimes we see our guys get into it and we have those inspirational performances as a team.
Oh, yeah.
But other times it's not, and we're just like, dang, how do we get it out of them? So
yeah, exactly.
It's so important. It's really at the college level. Sometimes there are just massively uneven teams where you're just going to get blowouts. But if it's 2 even remotely close teams, whichever team comes out firing that day,
honestly,
can
probably
make
the
a
one that's
huge
win.
Upset. You know, it's like it's a game of upsets for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so like honestly, like you and I both know a lot about Ultimate. We have a previous captain helping us out, knows a lot about Ultimate. Hey, we've got strategy stuff covered. We've already made all our preparation. Like all the ingredients are in. And it's really just all about setting the oven to the right temperature and just letting it cook, you know?
So how do you, as a captain, thinking more about the year as a whole, we start off in the college program, we start off at the beginning of the year, end of August, early September.
Mm-hmm.
When we get our new players in, like, what are you teaching them? What's the highest priority? Is it game awareness, throwing, athleticism? Yeah,
I think so. The emphasis that I really wanted to take with the club this year was, I guess, moving in a different direction from the past. In the past, and this is also what I experienced in high school Ultimate, is you kind of like, beginning of the year, you've got all your players, you make an assessment of them, and you start like trying to put them into boxes already. It's like, hey, like I can see like, you're probably going to be playing this position. Hey, you're definitely a cutter, or hey, you're definitely just going to be on the wing. There's a huge tendency, especially you learn host stack right away. Everyone does. And a lot of people, it's just like, all right, we're just going to stick you on the wing. And, of course, in scrimmage, they'll get open and get the disc like maybe twice, and they'll hardly get any touches. And then like we wonder why they don't improve a lot over the course of the year.
Yeah.
And I think that's not a good approach. So
it's like you wonder why your freshmen can't throw after a full season when they only ever touch the disc like twice a week at scrimmage.
Exactly, yeah. So coming into this year, I think we actually had our roster change a lot over the fall semester. A lot of people left, a lot of people came that we weren't expecting. And so there was like some pretty big changes, but my biggest focus was, hey, let's begin with the fundamentals. How do you cut? How do you throw? Focus on those things for a solid amount of time, and don't really begin to, teach basic offense, but don't really like get into set plays, offensive structures, and that kind of stuff too much. It's like, hey, how do you defend? How do you cut? How do you throw? How do you have a good awareness of the field? Building good habits, because habits are really everything with sports. It's like, in basketball, when you're on the free throw line, it's not about, it's about, keeping a level head. And the second is just about letting yourself just play off of your habits. What have you been doing this whole time? So it's all about building habits. So we've really been focusing a lot more this season on building skills, making sure that every player come regionals is as competent a Frisbee player as they possibly could have been. Not just that they know how to go to the right point in the host stack, or know how to leave the vert stack and re-enter it correctly. I could honestly care less about that stuff. That stuff tends to come together, second half of the season, second semester. What I care about more is how skilled we are as a team, how each individual player is making those adjustments to make themselves as good a player as possible.
Yeah, I think it's been very important for our team that every players felt like they had the freedom to try things out in scrimmage. And learn for themselves, let their own personal game grow. And
Exactly.
I think that's also then how you get people more invested throughout the year. And if you look at our team this year, one thing that we've talked about a lot that we're super happy with is that we feel 1 through 15, 16, however many people we have on our roster, every single player we bring to a tournament is a competent thrower, cutter, and can move around well, catch the disc, do all the fundamentals well. And so whoever we put on the field, we feel good about. We feel like every single one of our players is going to be a plus on our roster.
Exactly. We're not we don't have anyone kind of just lagging behind in that bottom tier. It's like, okay, say it's stall 8 and they're the only person open, and I don't want to throw it because I think they're just going to have a 50% chance of dropping it. No one's that's just not the case with
we don't have any people who on regionals we're going to only want to put in blowout games to give our good players rest.
Yeah, and I think especially for a club team, that's just a super important culture to have. Everyone enjoys the sport more. They're more likely to come back next year. They're more likely to ask other people to come. So it's a better culture for the club as well. People enjoy it more. It's more fun. And honestly, that College Ultimate, that's the big thing. It's we want to have a competitive culture, but the competitive culture is really there to have the most fun possible.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's a great point. And something I keep in mind being the president of the club is not getting too carried away with everyone must be head into the AUDL as soon as they graduate. That's not necessary.
Oh, the UFA.
The UFA. My bad. The UFA. But instead, keeping in mind, hey, let's keep these practices fun, make sure everyone's enjoying themselves, make sure there's friendships growing on the team.
Yeah.
And I think that's gone really well for our team this year. And not all that is us. Most of that is just the players themselves. And almost kind of a free market sort of way have just naturally, become great team players and form great friendships. So that's, we really appreciate all of the people on our squad. They've been great for us this year.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a really good analogy. It's hey, we're not trying to just look at people and just kind of implement a structure from top down almost arbitrarily. It's all right, you're going in this box, you're going in this position. I want you to be able to do this, this, and this. And if you go deep, I'm going to yell at you to never do that again. It's absolutely not. Or if you throw deep, I'm going to yell at you never to do it again because you're not that good a thrower. It's no. In practices, in tournaments, fall semester, and our tournaments, at the beginning of this semester, our sanction tournament, it's hey, I want you guys to, I want you guys to do stuff that you might not be super comfortable with, take a risk, develop your skills, and now that we're, fact of the fruit of that is that, hey, one of our players who came in could not play frisbee at all coming in last semester, threw a huck to me at last tournament, like 40 yards into the end zone, and I caught it, and it was a score. And it's like what on what other program is that happening?
Yeah.
Few.
Yeah, I think about a couple of our people who we've had around for a couple of years now. They're players who showed up, didn't know how to throw a disc, and I think we both watched them throw many hucks out of bounds by 40 yards or something, and in practice throughout the last year. But we let them do that enough, and then they figured it out. And now they're legitimate threats with the disc.
Yeah, I'm not going to yell at them not to throw a huck. I'm going to tell them how to throw a huck better. And
I think that is part of the benefit of having a player-run organization like our team. That's something I wanted to get into next. Is you see a team like us, you and me, we're two juniors, 20 years old, 21 years old for him at our school, and we're like the entirety of the team leadership. There's no adult showing up to our practices yelling at you. It's just chill Greg and Gabe who like might make fun of you a bit, but definitely aren't going to get mad at you. And I think as good as coaches are, and I think there's a lot of benefits to having like legitimate coaches, there's also some benefit to the team culture to having the player coaches like what we've had the last few years, because I think it really does get the players comfortable. They're not nervous about Gabe chewing them out after their bad performance at practice. Like we're all gonna go to the cafeteria together after practice and like make fun of each other for our bad throws that day.
I think you're the only player that I tend to chew out.
Yeah, no, we can chew each other out. That's fine.
Yeah,
and then we're roommates too, so we come back here and we'll give each other a hard time for sure. But all our players, we love our players.
Yeah. So of course, I mean, there are we're not just going to practice and throwing around. Like we take practice pretty seriously. It's structured. We have drills. We have drills intended to practice certain things. Sure. There's a balance to it. But it's not the same thing as, a program like Zach is running over at Davenport. It's a lot different.
Yeah, because I do think, though, on the flip side, there's some massive benefits to having real coaches. And I say real as in like not us. Actual adults who have played club, played professional,
and
played in college. And are paid maybe even like full time. I don't know if there's really full time coaches, but you get the idea.
Like maybe one.
And I think that especially on tournament day is so important, because that's something we do now is we bring in one of our alum who's our old captain. And so for practice, I think we handle practices just fine. Like I think a coach would be nice, but I don't miss a coach as much. But at tournaments, there was one day at the Butler tournament when you weren't there, and our alumni who we get coaching help from a lot of the time, he wasn't there, and it was just me with the team, and I was like playing every point and coaching, and it was just kind of messy. Honestly, I was like, I don't have like the mental capacity to be focusing on my on the field game and also watching the team as a whole to make the adjustments we need. Hey, like I think our zone isn't working really well. We should switch to man. Like I have no capacity to do that as I'm playing.
And even less capacity to say look at an individual player and try and find something they individually could be doing a lot better to help the whole team.
That's something that we're on tournament day. It's really important. And that's why we bring in our old college friend to coach us for tournaments, because he's really good. He'll pick out a particular player, tell him, hey, you need to slightly adjust what you're doing here in the stack.
Or he's just much more likely to point out, hey, here's a strategy that other team is using. I think we can do this to shut it down. And it's so helpful. It's a game changer, like we saw in our game against Xavier. So
and so at tournaments, having that bona fide coach is super helpful. But at practice, I think we've had a really good team culture this year with the chill vibes.
Exactly. And that's also going to help for the future. It's like, if we make sure that we have a good culture, that we're a group of friends who are dedicated to the sport but also dedicated to each other, that's just going to be so much better for the club down the line, that we continue getting players coming back and we can get more players in the future. It's such a huge deal. So,
and that's more important to us than even like winning. I'd rather lose at regionals but have a fun team with a lot of friends
and have a good after season party and go home.
Then make it to nationals, but because we were like slave driving our guys all year.
Yeah.
So I think it really, I think it's been a learning process for us as we've as we've led this team, we've learned more about it and what good team leadership looks like better.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited because we're only juniors, so we get to
We've got a full another year of doing
for
this
all of
next
next
year.
And I think we'll be able to do it better just with what we've learned from this year for sure.
And, it just goes to show the work we've been putting in. All of our players individually are so excited for next year, too. They're like, hey, we're looking awesome this year. We're looking better than ever. But, like, just think about next year. Like, say we're just a hair away from nationals this year. Just think about next year because it's going to be even better. It's like we can already see how they're so excited for the future of the club, how they've already invested their time in the future to the club already. So, yeah. Okay, so moving on to another ancillary topic to College Ultimate, moving away from the specific D3 scene in Great Lakes. We also want to talk a little bit about the prospect of college players playing pro. So, Greg, you yourself have gotten yourself a contract with Detroit Mechanics.
Yeah, so I just in January tried out and ended up making the Detroit Mechanics roster. So we're going to be trying to break the streak over there this year.
Let's go.
And I think it's a really cool thing that Ultimate Frisbee specifically offers people who get involved in college that other sports don't. Like, in all reality, if you show up to Hillsdale College, join our D2 football team, you can be a great D2 football athlete. You can put in 20 hours a week into training, and your odds of playing NFL are, like, approximately zero.
Yeah,
I think we've had one NFL player in, or two in our school's history.
Yeah.
And that's 100 years of our NFL of our football team, whereas our Ultimate team has been around for 2 years and we already have a pro player now. So I think people overestimate how hard it is to get into a higher level Ultimate scene in college.
And it's the fact of it being a younger sport, right? I mean, Ultimate is probably one of the fastest growing sports in the world right now. And it's just still kind of in its infancy in a big way. But that also, one of the great things about that is that the top level is just so much more accessible. And even think about just accessibility in general. It's like you actually have the ability to go to the DMX tryouts, actually make a show for yourself, and have a shot at getting on the team. It's like you, just like some scrub from Hillsdale College that no one's heard of before.
And
you still have to be like super good to get on the team. Like you have to be a great player to actually make the team, but you also just have the opportunity to do that. Whereas like, even good football players, good basketball players, it's like you can be good on your team, you can have skills, but you may never even have the opportunity to try out for a good team.
That's what I hear about. Whenever I watch, other sports and their big guys giving their life stories and stuff, they always talk about like how special it is to even get the chance.
Exactly.
It's like you can be the best player in the world and never even get seen. But in Ultimate, it definitely feels like when I show up to mechanics strats, if I play well, I'll get seen and have a shot. And it's also, I would recommend if you're in college, like take advantage of that college time because I think when I showed up to mechanics strats this year, I was far from like the most seasoned, well-tuned player, especially in the throwing game. I'm like, I'm a pretty good D3 college handler, but then when you put me in the AUDL, it's like I'm probably going to be throwing backwards all year if I had to guess.
Right.
But I think coaches really like young college players because it's a chance to get someone invested in your organization for a while, a chance to make them grow, especially if I think the biggest thing that got me a spot, I don't think my skill or athleticism was anything extraordinary that really got me noticed there. I think it was really just having like a winning mindset and being a really hard worker and letting that hard work show on the field.
A little bit of versatility too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this guy's entire life is that he has good throws, but he can't run. He can't run a 6 second 40. like how useful is that guy going to be in reality?
Yeah, exactly. I think for AUDL, you really just you got to show that you'll work hard on the field and really be like a max effort player. And I think that's something I've always found to be like my competitive edge more so than anything else. I don't have the best throws. I don't spend the most time in the gym, but I always just feel like when it's actually game day, like there's no reason not to just put in full effort.
Yeah, exactly.
So doing that, I think we both do that pretty well. Honestly, like for the two of us, we cover each other 3 days a week at our team's practices. And
we let the dogs out.
Yeah, over the course of the years, we've just kind of gotten better together. And as we get better at covering each other, we just force the other one to rise to the new level.
Yeah,
And I think we've
exactly.
both gotten a lot better.
I think that's one of the best things about, I mean, advice that I would give to any other college player right now is to find a rival on your team.
Yeah.
I mean, back when, in my cycling days, in high school, like the best way to get better at a sport is to have a rival and just like, almost on the pain of death, just like want nothing but to beat that person finally.
Yeah, we pretty much hate each other for
Oh,
a
yeah.
solid
Oh,
hour,
yeah.
3 days a week.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
We want nothing more than to see the other one get destroyed by ourselves. But
Yeah.
that's just the best for growing, especially in a sport like
Exactly.
Ultimate, like where it is very much head to head. It's personal in the coverage. You're trying to beat the guy standing right there in front of you.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, find that friend to get competitive with at practice,
Mm-hmm.
and then next thing you know, you might just both be at a level where you can show up to a high level tryout. And also,
Yeah.
another thing I would say is show up to tryouts. I think
They go to tryouts.
even if you don't have a shot, like I would love to go to like a super high level, like Chicago Machine tryout. I would love to do that. And there's no way I'd get on that team, but just being there and getting to play with those players
Yeah, exactly.
would be a great experience. And most tryout systems will give you personalized feedback, whether you make a team
Yeah,
or not. And
it's
that
super
can
helpful.
be really cool.
And also, I mean, you play in college, but the thing is, the college scene is just it's just a notch down from pro, and there's just no two ways about it. I mean, you take a look at Darkside versus Brown 2 years ago, it's like, yeah, they're playing great Ultimate, but like turnovers are like twice, like happening like more than twice as often than an AUDL game. It's like you can just tell the level of competition is so much lower.
I think
so.
the big
Do you gotta like
thing,
just insert yourself into that culture all of a sudden, play against those players who like you have to look up to because they're just amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's like
because there's
such a big
nothing that
deal.
gets you like integrated into the game better than playing with players better than you. Because that's the thing
yeah.
about even the higher level college guys. You can have 7 individually great players, but they're not veterans in the game, and so they're just making a lot of mistakes. And I think that's where my own game needs improvement the most, is just understanding exactly how to time up a cut, like how to position myself in what seems like downtime, things like that.
Right, exactly.
That you really just
don't even think about.
You pick
in
up
college,
those nuances only at higher levels, because those nuances like don't even make it to the surface level.
Yeah,
in college.
exactly. And it's really crazy. I mean, we saw this with the coach of the mechanics at their tryouts, but the level of stuff that those guys are thinking about just goes so much beyond what we're even considering. Of course, like, I'm familiar with a lot of Ultimate Strategy. Clearly, there's so much more for me to learn in the pro scene, and just way more that I'm ever going to even consider implementing into Hillsdale's program. So there's just so much room to grow, and it's exciting. So, I mean, most AUDL and most UFA and club tryouts are probably between $50 and $80. Just pay it and go.
Yeah, it's worth it if you're invested in the sport.
Yeah, it's probably for 2 days of tryouts. Probably maybe like 6 to 8, maybe even 10 hours of playing.
Yeah,
that's worth it. Definitely do it. And then also it's a good way to get into communication with some of those guys. Get to know club captains, get to know UFA coaches, because if they see you playing, like, hey, this guy's got potential, I want to see him try out again next year. Like, that means they want to see you try out again next year, right? They want to see you improve and come back. So
it's really good. The mechanics tryout was really cool because it was like Friday night, Saturday night, back to back, 5 hours from like 9 to 1 a.m. or something. Like, so by the end of that tryouts, it's a grind. You've been playing more Ultimate than time spent sleeping that weekend.
That was tough.
And that's where I really emphasize that hard work mentality, is because everyone is feeling bad at that point. But
yeah, exactly.
But if you can grind through that and play well, that's where you can really stand out. And to do that, you don't have to be the most skilled player or the best athlete there. You just have to have a little bit of extra mental toughness that can really get you through a tryout like that.
Like, you see this come up a lot in all professional sports, is you have there's just a distinction between, and a huge just chasm between players who super high skills, but they're chaotic. You just don't know how they're going to play. It's like, hey, this guy could carry us to a victory today because he's just having a good one, or he could just kill us, right, and turn it over 10 times. And what are we to do anything about that? Coaches hate players like that. Like it's just not good. Coaches. The difference between a player like that and a player who, has all those skills, has that top level, but is also just going to play like that every single time. That's a dominant player. I mean, that's a player that everyone looks up to, and that's what everyone should be looking for. And that's what coaches are trying to look for. Like, hey, this guy, clearly a high level of skill, but he just like makes stupid decisions, throws it away. I mean, a coach is honestly just gonna like turn one of those guys down for sure, especially if they also don't have a lot of good culture either. It's like they really want a player who has potential, but they can be confident, are gonna put in 100% effort, and stay at the top level of their ability throughout a whole game, no matter the weekend. So
yeah, and switching from the UFA scene to the club scene, that's something that we're both gonna try to do this summer. So this shirt here, Grand Rapids Beacon, is closest like high level club team to our school, so we're both going to be trying out for them. And so how do you think club teams react to young college talent at their tryouts?
I think club teams love it. You can already see it in UFA. A lot of UFA teams are, especially like up and coming ones, are really employing younger talent. Like the Alley Cats have like a high school player who's just cracked on their team. But it's definitely less common. I think club, it's a little bit more entrenched. There's a little bit more of a culture around it. It's been around for a lot longer, and some of the teams are kind of a little bit rigid, stuck in their ways a little bit. But I think club teams, especially just because there's so many of them, right? And a lot of teams have lower level farm teams. I know we were talking to our friend about Phantom, right?
Philadelphia Phantom.
They've got like 3 levels of teams. Like, hey, you can try for Phantom, and if you don't make it, you can just go to their B team or their C team. And over the course of a season or two, you can work your way up, right? And you can gain recognition. You can be in communication with all those players. You can play high level. You can play competitively, but you can also work your way up, which is just... It's a very good system and a really good opportunity. Also makes it more accessible. So I think club teams lend themselves a little bit more to college. And I mean, the great example of this, of course, is going to be Ring of Fire and Raleigh Flyers, right? I mean, they're clearly, half the roster, I think, is just all UNC Darkside guys. So I think club really lends itself to the college scene a lot more, and is really a lot more open to it, which is, I think, really good.
Yeah, I think... see that is a lot of the best club teams will be the teams that are like located right next to a really high level college team. Like in Carolina, Darkside is probably the best college team in the country, so no kidding, Raleigh Ring of Fire and is going to be one of the best club teams and go to nationals every year.
And I mean that means a lot because like take a look at that. Compare Ring of Fire and Pony. Ring of Fire took down Pony at Club Nationals last year. That just goes to show you a lot. There's there's a club team that's very set. Like, hey, we're gonna have these guys. They're gonna be our playing. They're gonna be the ones on the team getting playing time, and they're just probably not really all that open to new talent coming on, like a new face showing up. But totally different with Ring of Fire.
Yeah,
and Ring of Fire, it was a close game, but beat them 15-14.
Yeah, I imagine if you're like an explosive college student with some crazy talent, you're not going to get much recognition at a Pony tryout. But Ring of Fire tryout, that's exactly what they're looking for. They'll take you, work with you throughout the year, make you a little bit of a smarter player.
Yeah.
And then you've got that skill and talent. Young people are often, in our 20s, we're ready to really like put our bodies out there.
Yeah, put our bodies on the line. Exactly.
We've usually had like a few less knee surgeries than the guys in their 30s. So
a few less.
A few fewer
knee injuries, knee replacements.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of the great things about, I think we see this with Beacon a little bit, is that the older guys, the veterans on the team, of course, there have to be veterans on a team. There has to be people who have a lot more experience to, like, bring the younger guys into it, because there's just a huge experience gap between those. There's no two
ways about it.
Yeah, there's no substitute for experience, right?
Yeah.
But that's one of the great things. Like the older guys on the team, the ones who have a little bit of legacy, the ones who have that experience, are just so excited to teach these younger
Yeah.
players
That
and to show them stuff. And that's
yeah.
just such a big part of building team culture. That club
hmm
has to emphasize a little bit more than UFA because
Yeah.
I mean, clubs, of course, it's like it's entirely on our own time and money, right? That's just kind of how it is. Whereas,
Yeah.
especially with top UFA players, they're probably getting something or
Yeah.
some kind of compensation,
Exactly.
or are having to balance that
Mhm.
with a full time job.
That was it with my experience. I practiced with Beacon a little bit. They're like a top 50-ish club team,
Hmm.
and I just had such a good experience with those coaches and the captains that they have there. Really good players, but even better coaches,
Yeah,
and really fun to play with, really welcoming, and that's just something that makes me really want to play with them again this year. And I'm also going to make you play with them, and
yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
another friend of ours is going to be on the team. So that's club is a great place to have fun playing frisbee.
exactly. And it gets to that point of sports that's just where the fun really comes out. It's like, back at, in the history of our college team, we had, this tension between the casual scene and the competitive scene. And the casual scene would always get mad at the competitive people for showing up to their little like stuff on the quad. Um, but it's really, and because they think they want it to be fun, right? But what people realize when it comes to high level sports, and Ultimate just has the perfect scene, the perfect circumstance for this kind of thing, is it can just be such a fun sport. Like being able to play, put your body out on the line, give
hmm
everything to it. It's all on your own time. It's all because you love the sport. It's all because you want to be there and because you want to get
Yeah,
better. And that kind of fun you just can't find anywhere else.
yeah. It's such a great sport to play in college, to make friends in college. It's done so much for both of us. So we're excited for our college season coming up, and then after that, UFA season, and after that, maybe club season. So we're both looking forward to playing a lot more Ultimate in the next year. But that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you all soon.
Yeah.